Going on, Jamie?
Yo, what's
How's
good?
everything?
Oh,
How's everything?
let me turn my light on so I can get brighter on you.
All good.
There it is.
How's everything going, man?
I can't complain, man. All is well. Just maintaining like everybody else.
I hear you.
What
Well,
about you?
I'm doing good too, man. I'm happy that we have the chance to reconnect and talk again. It's been a couple of years since our last interview. We did it in Vancouver before
Yes.
your show, so it's a few years back. But of course, you have some new stuff that you just put out as well. So want to get into that. Want to get into the history of the group, and we'll get into all of that. First off, shouts to everyone else from All-4-One, you guys. When I met you guys, just an amazing group of guys, and I love that you guys are still doing shows, still rocking it out. So much love for that. But let's start off with your solo endeavors here. You just dropped a Christmas EP.
Yep.
It's getting great reception. Just talk about putting that EP together.
It's so funny. It was kind of last minute. For those who do not know, I do a lot of songwriting production. So I work with a lot of different artists. And I was actually working with my best friend, Wayne Brady. And I'm actually working on his next project. And we had actually we were going to do a Christmas EP on him just because he, like myself, hasn't released any music in a while. And so we started working. And just like my brother in Wayne Brady fashion, man, this guy, I call him the hardest working man since James Brown. He got another really amazing TV show that you'll see coming out soon on Fox. And so we weren't really able to, spend time on a Christmas project. It's like, let's just focus on your regular project. And then I told him, I said, listen, if you're cool with it, since we already started working, I'm just going to finish this out and put it out as my solo thing, because I haven't released any solo music since '05. And
Yeah, exactly.
so he was like, dude, you got to do it, bro. So I was like, all right. So I put this together really quickly, called some of my friends to help me get it done, including, some amazing singers who I work with, like Paulina, or she goes by Pau. And another girl named Marissa Lauren, who's also super dope, and also some of my musician and songwriter friends, my partners, the heavyweights. We just started getting it together, and now I got a Christmas EP.
Wow, amazing. I mean, you talked about your album that came out in the mid 2000s. Like, just talk about, working alongside with your group, which you're still part of, but then branching off, doing music separately. Like, just talk about the balance there for you.
It's been a blessing. Me and the guys, we're actually celebrating 26 years of being together, the same original four. We've never stopped touring. We've been super busy, and we were supposed to be super busy this year, but everybody's schedule got changed with everything going on. But the one thing that we've always said was All-4-One is the base of everything that we do.
Right.
But when we all started out, I started singing when I was 5 years old, and my goal, of course, in the beginning was to be a solo artist, to be like Michael and Prince and whatnot.
Yeah.
And God just had other plans, and he made the whole group thing work out. And it was fun, and it still is. Those guys are my brothers. They're my best friends as well. And, we support each other. But, we all have musical aspirations that differ from what the group does.
Right.
Dealist is actually working on some solo stuff. He'll be releasing his really soon. And I actually am I'm also going to do just a regular solo R&B EP as well in soon. And I've got new All-4-One music I'm working on. So we're going to be busy.
Wow. Wow. I mean, talk about your own solo project, because I know with the heavyweights, you guys have done a lot behind the scenes too. R&B has definitely changed a lot since when you guys first came out. Like, what's your approach to R&B these days?
I try to approach R&B from a lot of the same ways I always have. Meaning, like, for me, it's always about the song first. The song is king.
Yeah. Yeah.
A dope song can be remixed. You can always do new music to it. But the one thing that always stays the same is that song, the melody, the lyrics. And I try to tackle any music I do with that same kind of old school mentality that, I just got to make sure that the song is king, that the melody
Yeah.
is something that's memorable, that people hopefully will hear it one time and go, you know, they may not get the lyrics, but they, hey, you know that song, you know, oh, you know, they may not know the lyrics, but hopefully the melody is something that sticks with them enough that they keep that and retain it. And that's one of the things that, to me, is probably the most important part of songwriting. And a lot of times when I write, I always start with the melody first. I'll get
Yeah.
a microphone, I'll sing in melodies, and then I make sure that the melodies just feel great with no words. And then I'll listen and say, all right, what does this song want to be about? And I just let the song speak to me. And then that's when I start, you know, in on the lyric side.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy because like obviously I know about your work with the group. You wrote a lot with the group, but I didn't really know about your work behind the scenes with the heavyweights. And
Mm-hmm.
I took a quick look today. You have the Pussycat Dolls, you have Neil, you have just so many different names. Like when did that start for you like putting together a production team with your friends and just going at it behind the scenes?
You know, it's my dream was always, I always wanted to be an artist like Stevie, like Prince, like Babyface, who was an artist, you know, in front of the camera, but also worked behind the scenes with a lot of other artists and helping other artists to realize their dreams and realize the music that they've got inside them that they may not know how to get out. And, you know, I always wrote half of all the All-4-One records in the beginning, and now I do
Yeah,
basically all of them. And it was
right.
probably, I mean, it was late 90s that I really started to put more emphasis on being a songwriter and a producer. I started taking trips to Nashville, working with country writers,
Mm,
gospel writers. I started working with rock writers here in LA with hip hop guys. Like I started working with everybody because I figured I could learn something from everyone. And I figured like when I started as a singer, I had to pay my dues. And I figured if I was going to be a good songwriter, that I was going to
yeah,
have to take some of those same type of roads and do some of the same type of stuff. And so I really started branching out on my own in the late 90s, and I partnered up at the time with my partner Jason, and then
yeah,
he and myself and my buddy Jack, we formed a production company called the Heavyweights in the early 2000s,
yeah.
and we're all still doing it together. And we brought in another a good friend of ours named Matt Wong, who's super talented, and now Matt is also down with us. And you know, we've been
Wow,
working on all kinds of stuff from, as you said, Pussycat Dolls to Wayne Brady to Little Wayne. We've been doing lately a lot
wow,
of like Disney and Netflix and you know, Nickelodeon and kids music, as well as working with a lot of really dope K-pop and J-pop artists, all kinds of different things.
wow, amazing. And with the group All-4-One, the one thing I'll always say is, and it's kind of weird, like when we look back at all the R&B groups that came out of the 90s,
Hmm.
no one really talks about All-4-One. I think it's because you guys had that crossover effect.
Hmm.
Do you guys ever look at that? Like, because when people think about 90s R&B and the groups, they think of Boyz II Men, Jodeci, 112, Jagged, and Drew, but All-4-One is never really in that conversation. Like, just
Right.
how does that, talk about that?
You know, I think it was because we were always a little more pop R&B and not just
Right.
strictly straight up R&B. And that was because it's so funny when we started our album, our very first debut album, it
Mhm.
was an R&B record.
Right.
And I swear it literally got added on at the last minute. It wasn't even in the artwork for the first 250,000 copies of the album. It just had a big
Wow.
red sticker on it that said also includes the hit I Swear. And
Mm.
then our first single was So Much in Love, which was you know, the acapella record,
Yeah.
and that broke at Black Radio. It was Black Radio that started All-4-One's career.
Yeah.
And then when I Swear came out, that went completely super pop.
Right.
And then, you know, and then we just kind of faced this weird limbo of, you know, we weren't black enough for some of the black R&B folks, but we weren't
Right.
white enough for some of the like super pop, and we were just in this in this middle area. But the thing is, we still were so blessed to have a lot of people who supported us, who loved us, and we just kind of learned back then that, listen, it doesn't matter, you know, what genre they put us in. The only thing that really matters is if people are digging what we're doing, if people are loving our music and they're supporting us, then that's all that really matters. You know, I can't fit into anybody's box. I can only
Yeah.
be me. And we had to really learn that that, you know, it's not really about that. And listen, we're fans of a lot of those folks. I love Jodeci. I love Boyz II Men are my friends. Like these, you
Yeah.
know, we all cool. And, you know, it's not a competition. Everybody, there's room enough for everybody to do some dope stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you just gotta do you, and
Yeah.
and let the rest kind of work itself out.
Right. And you know what's crazy though? The one thing I'll say about All-4-One is you guys have been able to find so much success overseas,
Yeah.
especially in Asia. Like,
Yeah.
how did that happen? Like, when did you guys start realizing that there was a whole different fan base that loved you guys over there?
Man, it was in the very beginning. You know, we were so blessed that whatever records we sold inside the US, we would do that plus half
Wow.
outside the US. And, you know, we were able to really establish the fan base, especially in all of Asia. I mean, we were the third American band ever let into mainland China. You
Yeah.
know, and when China took over Hong Kong and it went back to Chinese rule, you know,
Yeah.
we were the only American band asked to come over and do a concert, you know,
Wow.
for that whole thing. And, you know, and honestly, every year, I mean, we're either, you know, we're somewhere over there, whether it's Thailand or it's Indonesia, which we go to quite a bit, or Hong Kong or the Philippines or Japan. I mean, even at the beginning of this year, we were on a little mini tour. So we started in Seattle, and then we went and did a week in Hawaii, and then we did a week in Beijing, and a week in Shanghai, and a week in Tokyo, and then we were, excuse me, from Tokyo out to Florida, and then you know, COVID started really clamping down on everybody's lives. But it's been a blessing that that fan base over there has not only been super supportive, but you know, they love for us to come over and do shows. And so even when people here didn't know what was going on with us here, we were over there
Yeah.
working.
Yeah. And it's crazy because overseas, they love R&B. They love just that 90s R&B that we all
Definitely.
grew up loving. Like, and I think over there it's easier to put out that type of music. Have you found that to be the case?
Oh yeah, you know, the other thing I love about the fans over there is they just never forget. Like, if
Hmm.
they love you forever. And
Yeah.
it's never like here in the States. Sometimes you're only as big as your last record, that a lot of
Yeah.
people like to say. But over there, they just never forget, man. And I'm like that. You know, artists who have touched me, who I love, like
Hmm.
once I love you, like, yo, we locked. Like, I might as well put a wedding band on you because I ain't gonna let you go. You know, but over there it's a lot like that, and they just appreciate live music. Like, if you can do it live and you can make those records sound even doper live than it does on the record, like, they appreciate that. So we love going over, man, and seeing all our fans over there, and just having a good time performing music.
Amazing. Now let's take it back to the beginning for All-4-One. 94 is the debut album. You know, you talked about how I Swear was like one of the last records added to the project. I'm just curious, like, who was your blueprint when you guys were putting the group together? Because I know Boyz II Men was out by then. A lot of New
Yeah.
Jack Swing groups were out. Like, what was the blueprint for All-4-One?
You know, it's so funny. As I was saying, you know, we all started out as solo artists, and I had, you know, I was very involved in my church when I was younger. Of course, I started singing in church when I was, you know, 5 years old. But when I was 17, this guy came to my church,
Hmm.
and he had a cassette tape, for those who remember cassettes.
Yeah.
Uh, our first record, you know, So Much in Love, which was an a cappella joint.
Yeah.
And he was like, listen, if you could put a group together, I can get you a record deal. So
Mm.
I said, oh, I know exactly who to call. I just, you know, I call my friends. So of course I called my friends. We went to Magic Mountain, Six Flags Magic Mountain for the day, sang this song everywhere in the park, and, you know, learned it. And then we auditioned for him, and we got a record deal. And it was just like that.
Wow.
So it was like, when we were putting this group together, it was never a thing of, yo, we should do something that's a mix of, you know, Call Me Bad because they're interracial, and
Yeah.
Boys Men because they do soul. And it was just kind of like, you know, that was our foot in the door. That was our big break. And if it meant that I had to be in a group to actually get
Mhm.
on, then I was just
Yeah.
going to be in a group. And, you know, we were very blessed to do that. And we never had time to figure out, you know, well, who are we going to pattern ourselves after? You know, the only
Right.
thing we used to say is, once that started and it happened, we would say, listen, you know, God willing, we want to retire from music. We want to be
Mhm.
like those, you know, like the Temptation and the Four Tops that just go
Right.
on, till we're all in a wheelchair singing together. We just want to do it forever. And, we love being on stage together. We love singing together. We're friends. Like, we have a good time on the road. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of our whole thing, was just like, yo, let's just do this for as long as God allows us and as long as people will listen.
Yeah. And that debut album, man, like that had people listening. It was like 4 times platinum. You guys got a Grammy off that project. I swear, one of the biggest songs that I know of. Like, just take me back to that era and what you remember about it.
I mean, the 90s was just like, what was so dope, honestly, for me about
Yeah.
the 90s was that you had this coming together of hip hop and soul, and they were
Yeah.
finding their way to each other, where it used to be totally separate things,
Hmm.
but of course Teddy started it with the whole New Jack Swing.
Yeah.
But you were just having this thing where you would hear hip hop beats and people were singing over it, or
Yeah.
where you had folks like Snoop Dogg on the pop charts with
Hmm.
just, it was like stuff you had never seen before. And it was like so cool because you would get that raw feeling that you loved about hip hop, but then you were getting with dope melodies and folks who actually could sing and harmonies on top of it, and you were getting like, one of the things I say all the time to a lot of the singers that I work with is, when I'm writing a song, the thing that I like to make sure that is embedded in that record is emotion, because
Hmm.
that's what the 90s were about. Like, you heard a record and you felt something. Like,
Yep.
I saw Jermaine Dupri had logged on. Like, when you
Yeah.
heard Welcome to Atlanta, you were like, yo, I feel like I'm there even though I'm here in LA. Like, if you
Hmm.
heard a record that made you want to dance, Whitney said, I want to dance with somebody. You're like, yo, I want to dance with somebody too, girl, because you
Right.
believed her. You know what I'm saying? When she's saying, one of the things I love about Whitney, and I always make this reference to a lot of singers, is Whitney never wrote any of her records, but you would never know that from how she sang those records. She sang
Right.
those records like they came from a personal place, because she
Hmm.
found a way to connect with the emotion of that record. And so, I think it's some of the music today, we're missing some of that emotion, but there's some
Right.
dope artists today too who I really love, who I think are connecting on that end. But that was one of the things I think in the 90s that made it so cool, because there was an emotion that was attached to every record. But then, like, if you were a hip hop head or if you were an R&B head, there was something for you in there, because you could listen to certain artists from back
Right.
then and kind of get all of that in one big mixed pot of gumbo.
Right. Yeah. Good point. And I mean, let's talk about the record I Swear, because a lot of people know that song, and I'm sure a lot of people also know that there was a country version that came out by another artist before you guys got to it. Just talk about the origins of how it got to you guys.
It was crazy. So our album was finished. It was in mastering.
Yeah.
And at the time, Doug Morris, who was the president of Atlantic Records, now he's the
Yeah.
president of like everybody. But
Everything. Yeah.
yeah. But at the time, he was the president of Atlantic Records. So he called us into his office. And he said, hey, I want y'all to hear something.
Mm.
So we go in his office, we shut the door, and he plays us this country song. And, it's like, I swear by the moon and stars in the sky. So we're listening, right? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, so what do you guys think? And I was like, yo, it's a cool record. And everybody else
Yeah.
was like, yo, it's dope. And he was like, I want you guys to sing this song. And I was like, wait a minute, like, we're an R&B group. Our song's So Much in Love right now, it's climbing up the charts. It started at the black radio station. Like, we're R&B. Like, that don't
Yeah.
sound R&B at
Hmm.
all.
Yeah.
He said, listen, you just let me worry about all that stuff. He said, I'm gonna
Mm.
get David Foster to produce it on you guys, and he's gonna do for you what he did for Whitney Houston and I Will Always Love You.
Mm.
And I just remember all the other guys were like, yeah, let's do it. And I was the only one a little hesitant. And then I
Right.
finally was like, you know what? Let's do it. And then we later found out that before that meeting he had with us, he had the same meeting with Gerald Levert. And he had
Oh
offered the
wow.
record to Gerald. And Gerald turned him down and said, nah, you know, that's a country record. You know, I'm not going to do that. And so we were, you know, very fortunate because, you know, that became a huge blessing for us.
Yeah.
And the rest was history, man. I'll never forget, man, riding in a station wagon in Seattle, Washington. And we were excited because we had a show that night with Tony.
Yeah.
And we were rolling with our Atlantic rep, and we were on our way to a radio station. So everybody was loud and talking in the car. And, you know, everybody always talks about my ears because I could hear just the most minute things sometimes.
Right.
So I started saying to everybody, shut up. Y'all hear that? Turn up the radio, and they're playing I Swear.
Wow.
And I remember that the Atlantic rep that we were in the car with was tripping because he was like, they're playing that. I was like, yeah, it's pretty evident. It's on the radio now, bro. And he was like, no, you don't understand. He was like, we sent this song on a cassette to just some influential radio stations around the country just to get their thoughts on it. He said, we never got them. You know, back then they didn't play CDs. They had these cartridges that looked like 8 tracks, and they would play, you know, they didn't play records off a cassette tape. And so he was like, you know, we never gave them the official release to play this. He's playing it off the cassette. Wow. So then after our show that next day, we found out that everybody they sent the song to on the cassette immediately added it into their rotation, and the song just started taking off like a wildfire.
Yeah, and it's crazy because even to this day, like, I don't know if people realize when you have a record like that and a catalog like you guys have, you guys can pretty much tour for the rest of your lives.
You listen, man, it's about, as an artist, right? Every artist dreams of getting what I like to call a money song. And if you can get more than one money song, it's better for you because that means that when you have that money song, and that's a song that people, you know, 26 years later remember. Yep. Those are what help you be able to retire from music one day. And of course, you know, everybody wishes they could have a string of money songs, but you know, you just have what you have. But we've been very blessed, you know, to be a part of, you know, have a few of those type of songs as well as some other ones, you know, like when we did the Hunchback of Notre Dame for Disney, and we had that song, you know, Someday, which was also a big record for us, and you know, the Space Jam, and we did I Turn to You before Christina Aguilera did it. You know, so we've been blessed to have, you know, quite a few songs over the years that hope, you know, that when we go in to do a concert, people come to the shows because they want to hear those records.
Right. Talk about the second album. You guys got a huge hit off that platinum album. Like, would you say that the direction of the group or the sound of the group changed from the first to the second album because of the success of I Swear?
Most definitely. You know, like I said, when we started, our goal was to be complete R&B. Yeah. And I Swear came along and was this huge pop record, and that just changed the, you know, the trajectory of our career. So when we went into the second album, it was like, well, you know, you can have some R&B flavor, but we got to throw a little more pop in there too, because you now have a fan base, and you now have, you know, folks that want to hear something that could go along with I Swear, you know. So, you know, here comes I Can Love You Like That, which was, you know, the first single. And it was so funny because our last single on our first album, which was a song called She's Got Skills, was still at radio and still being played quite a bit when I Can Love You Like That came out. And so we had to, you know, get radio stations to stop playing Skills, because back then they would only play one song from you. They didn't want to play multiple. So I was like, okay, well, this is the new single, so you got to stop playing the old one and head on over here to the new one. But it did, you know, that second album, we called it And the Music Speaks because we used to get asked a lot of questions about us all being different as far as our ethnicities were concerned. I mean, we got 2 black guys, a Mexican guy, and a white guy. And our whole thing was, listen, color don't mean nothing. Soul is an unseen thing. Anybody can have soul. Anybody who feels deeply, who loves deeply, can have soul. And we just got tired of answering questions about, you know, do we get along? Do we fight? Do we this? And it was like, listen, we let the music speak for us. And that's how, if you want to know how we get along, just listen to our music. So that's why we called that second album And the Music Speaks.
Right. Amazing. And then, of course, like you mentioned, the Space Jam soundtrack, which to me is like one of the most epic soundtracks of the 90s. You guys have a record on there. Diane wrote it. Diane
Yep.
Warren wrote it. Like, just
Yep.
talk about being a part of that.
Well, I mean, that was amazing. You see, I'm older than you, bro. So,
Yeah.
My cartoons growing up was like, Bugs Bunny when I was super young, and
Hmm.
then He-Man and Transformers and the GoBots and all that stuff, G.I. Joe. But, I mean, it's like Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan. Seriously? Like, they're going to be in a movie and you want us on the soundtrack? And
Yeah.
it's a Diane Warren song? And you're going to get Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis to produce it? Like,
Wow.
that's a win all the way around. So we were super, super excited about that, about being able to work with Diane finally, being able to finally work with Jimmy and Terry to have a song on this epic soundtrack. The only
Right.
thing that really sucked about that situation was we were supposed to be the last single. And
Mm.
the soundtrack had already sold 10 million records. And Diane went to, at the time, so now Doug Morris isn't there anymore. It's a guy named Val Azzoli. So Diane
Okay.
goes to Val and she's like, listen, you got to release my record. You said you were going to release it as a single. And he's like, listen, Diane, we've sold 10 million records. We've had this many number ones already. Like, we're good. You already had a number one with Monica, and For You I
Mhm.
Will. And she was like, no, you're not going to waste my record. This is what we talked about. And he was like, we're just not going to do it. We spent too much money. So she
Mhm.
says, I'll pay. I'll pay for
Yeah.
all the radio promotion. And when this song
Wow.
goes number one, you'll just pay me back. And he still said, nah, I'm good.
Wow.
And so that's when Diane said, okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to give the song to someone else just to
Mm.
show you the mistake that you made by not
Wow.
releasing that. Now, of course, we're in the balance. Like, we were always told from day one, like here, Atlantic Records is putting this out. We're an Atlantic Record artist. You know
Yep.
what I'm saying? And we were supposed to have a single, and now you're going back and you're not releasing our record. And she's offering to pay for it. And you're like, nah, I'm good.
Right.
And then, of course, history says a few years later, however many years later,
That's a big hit.
this young Latina girl who can sing, she puts it out, and it goes straight to number one for her.
Yep. It happens sometimes.
It is what it is, man.
Yeah. I mean, Jamie, let's talk about the third All-for-One album, On and On. This was 4 years apart from, the second album. Music by that point had changed a lot. I think that's when Timbaland was really taking over.
Yep.
Dark Child, like the sound of R&B completely changed by then. I think the Neptunes were starting to come in. Like, just talk about the approach with that third album, because to me, it would have been kind of hard for you guys to translate from what you guys were doing to trying to adapt to a sound like that and have the fan base follow that.
Right. Well, and it's so funny that you mentioned that, because not only was the sound of R&B changing, but the sound of pop was changing, because
Yeah.
now, you've got Tim and Chad and Pharrell over here. They're doing their thing. But then you've got the Backstreet Boys and
Max
NSYNC
Martin,
on
yep,
this side, and Max
yep.
Martin. And it's so funny because I remember having a conversation with Atlantic Records, and they were like, listen, we want you guys to be more pop. Like, we want you to be like the Backstreet Boys.
Mm.
And we're like, well, wait a minute. When we had a conversation with the Backstreet Boys before anybody knew who they were, they wanted to see a tour bus, and we were doing a show in Orlando. And so we let them on our bus. They gave us their demo tape, which we still have. And, we just hung out and talked to them, and they were telling us that they were trying to be like us. So
Right.
it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. So you're saying to me, you want me and these guys to be like them. I said, listen, there's enough space for everybody. We ain't got to be like them. Let them be the Backstreet Boys. Let us be All-4-One. It's worked for us so far. We're not going to try to, switch it up and start trying to copy other folks. That's just not how we get down.
Right.
And so I remember us kind of, butting heads a little with the label because of that. And, we just wanted to do what we were doing. So we stuck to what was working for us. And at the time, we were actually signed to an independent label, the same label that signed us with So Much Love. And then that independent label, they had a deal with Atlantic. It was a joint venture.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember in the middle of our first single, we finally got another Diane Warren song.
Yeah.
The song is most added every week at radio.
Wow.
It's climbing. And in the middle of that song, I remember our label head at the time coming to us and saying, we don't need Atlantic Records no more. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Hang on. What are you talking about, bro? And he was like, yeah, we don't need them bastards. I'm like, wait, well, our single is on the charts right now. It's on at radio, going up the charts. Like, what do you mean we don't need them? And that was kind of our last hurrah with Atlantic. And, from that point on, we took over our own careers. And that's, what we've been doing ever since.
Yeah, I mean, talk about that transition over to going independent, because you guys were independent before it was cool to be independent. This was like the 2000s when nobody wanted to be independent. Everyone wanted to be on a major. Like, was that tough for you guys at that time?
Oh, of course, because independents didn't have the same playing field that the majors had. And at that time, iTunes wasn't as, prevalent and big, and or wasn't even around really. So it was like you had to fight to get, shelf space at Best Buy or at Sam Goody or at, HMV and all of the Tower Records and all that stuff. And as an independent, each week they only allowed so many new records to be on that new album, that new release shelf. And like, as an independent, you were fighting with all these major artists, and these major artists are, they're dropping, 30, 40 records a week. And here you are with one record coming, trying to make it happen. But, we figured that we were tired of people trying to make us into something that they wanted us to be. We want to be who we wanted to be. We wanted to sing our music the way, the way we felt it. And my whole thing with music is, I think that at the end of the day, as an artist, you put your best foot forward and you make the music that makes you feel the best that you can feel. And then you pray that there are other people in the world who listens to music the way you listen to it, And we didn't want to keep putting ourselves in this oh, we're in sync because we can dance and we're going to do this. And we're gonna, nah, bro, let them do that. We're going to do us. And even if that means, us just saying, and at the time there were opportunities for us to get back on a major label, but the thing is, we were going to run into the exact same the exact same issues that we had before. So it was like, we got to make a choice. It may backfire on us, but if we don't try, then we'll just live with all this regret.
Right. And was there any point during that transitional period that you guys thought about throwing in the towel? Because, I mean, it's a huge transition going from a major to an indie. The success is going to be different. The money is going to be different. Like, talk about that.
Well, everything, as you said, is different. The thing is, when you can, even in today's time, right, if a pop record, I tell every artist, if you're trying to put out a pop record and do it like the traditional way a major does it, you need to have at least $150,000 set aside at the minimum. And that's for your promotion, that's for your radio, that's for your video, and that's not enough to cover everything. That's just to get you started. So when you are on a major label who has deep pockets, and if you are a priority at that label, then they don't mind saying, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up the chest for All-4-One. And then this first single, we're going to do the video, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. We're going to go here, and we're going to do there. And we feel like with this record we have, that if we get it rolling and radio is playing it this many times a day, that will give us the footing we need for this album to take off. But when you're independent, everything is on you. Everything. Including if a radio station says, yo, we're loving this record, can you come out and do our summer jam? Well, you gotta fly out there, and that's on your dime, that you gotta go out there, that you gotta put yourself up, and you gotta do all these things, because it's great promotion, but the radio stations don't pay the artists to do that. They just give the artists a lot of great promotion. So it's like, we found out real quick how much Atlantic actually was really doing, in the back end, and how much now that is on us. So that's when it becomes like, okay, y'all, we got to be super strategic with how we roll. Relationships in the music business is everything. And we're going to have to start now really leaning on our relationships, as well as, becoming way more business savvy, because it is the music business. And a lot of times, most of us artists, we only focus on the music side of it. but not the business side of it. And that's
Hmm.
why you hear these stories all the time of so many artists being taken advantage of, because artists are very trusting people. And when
Right.
somebody who has, the gift of gab comes into our lives and starts talking, and we're like, yo, you should represent me. And then you
Right.
find out that you've been in the bed with the devil the whole time. It's too late. And,
Yeah.
and, and so I know, especially for me, I really took an interest in making sure that I got the business side of the music business down, that I
Right.
understood contracts, that if for some reason my lawyer couldn't look at my contract, it's all good. I know what it says, and I know what
Right.
to ask for, and I know what to say. You need to take that out, So it was definitely a learning curve, but I wouldn't trade it in for a thing, because I wouldn't be the person I am now and know the things I know now without
Mhm.
going down the road that we went.
Wow, amazing. But at no point were you guys like, you know what, this is too much. Let's just call it quits. Was there ever a point for you guys?
Oh yeah. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. There's always like when you feel you got a dope record, you're like, yo, we got something here. But it's like you're fighting an uphill battle, man. It's like you see all these
Yeah.
other artists and they're at that top of the mountaintop, and here you are trying to push up your whole speakers and your keyboards. You're trying to push up the mountain to get up there, and it's
Yeah.
hard as hell. And
Hmm.
they're there, and they're there because they got those folks behind them. They got all this stuff behind them, and it does get hard. But at the same time, excuse me, I tell my kids that, listen, anything in life worth having is hard,
Right.
because if it were easy, everybody would do it.
Yep.
Everybody would do it. But the
Yep.
thing is, no matter what it is you do in life, man, if you decide to be a janitor, at some point it's going to be hard. You're going to have some competition. This other dude's mop skills is killing yours. You got to
Yep.
bring up your game. So it's like, no matter what it is in life that you end up doing, you
Hmm.
got to know that at some point it will get hard. But if you're passionate about it, if you love what you do, you'll stick with it. You'll say, yeah, it's hard, but I love this and I'm gonna stay with it, and I'm gonna find a way around this. And I look at the music business as a roller coaster. You're up,
Right.
you're down, you're up, you're down. But the thing is, a lot of people, they don't finish the ride. They go up, they get to the top, and you're at the top of that roller coaster and you can see the whole city, and then you go down, and then a lot of people, they don't have a seatbelt on. When it
Yep.
starts going back up, they fall out. you know
Hmm.
but it's just knowing that there's ebbs and flows, that there's
Yeah.
up, there's downs. You just got to stay in the car, and you just got to know that this is my passion, this is what I was meant to do. And yeah, it may be hard, but I'm gonna stay with it, because at some point I'm gonna get back up to the top of this ride, and I'm gonna see the city one more time.
Right. No, it's crazy because a lot of artists that came up in your era, a lot of them, they've pretty much given up. They just tour. They're not really thinking about putting out new music because it is a different industry now.
Yeah.
So to hear that you guys are still motivated, even with the Christmas EP that you just put out, for you guys to still be recording music, like I think that speaks a lot to you guys and the group and just where your careers are at right now.
Listen, man, I love music with every fiber of my being. In every area of my life, man, whether it was a happy moment when I was
Hmm.
having kids or getting married, when it was a sad moment when I lost my parents, whether it was um, a moment of triumph, a moment of just being down. The one thing that has always been constant in every moment is music.
Hmm.
Music
Yeah.
has always been there. It's always, a song, this song. I tell people all the time, I grew up with this gospel group called Commission. I grew
Yeah.
up singing their songs. And there's a song they have called Cry On.
Okay.
And when I lost my parents, that song helped me to get through. It was music that was there for me. And it's like, until the day that I have no voice, until the day that God says, all right, son, it's time for you to do something else,
Yeah.
no one will ever stop me. And I don't care who listens to it or who don't listen to it. I'm going
Right.
to put it out there because this is something I need to do for me. It's
Right.
something that there might be somebody that this might help. And it might be somebody that falls in love to listen to this, or gets married to this, or has a child to this, or just is just chilling out to it, whatever it might be. I just got to know that I need to I need to get this off of my chest, and I need to really just share. This is how I share my thoughts with the world. This is how I share my truth. And I applaud every artist, no matter where they are in their life, putting out music, because you know it's not easy. It's a vulnerability that you got to be able to take hold of, to put it out there for people to judge it. It's like your kids, you know, when people ask me, you know, what's the best song you've done? What song you like the most?
Right.
That's like asking me which of my kids I like the most. Like I like them all. I love my children, but the thing is they're different, you know. And it's like the same thing with music. So I'll always, man, as long as I have a voice. I know it was a long time between like my last project and now
Right.
this one, but the thing is, there was a lot of projects in between with All-4-One and some
Yeah.
other things that I was doing that that did come out. So I just love music, man, and thank you for that, man, and thank you too for this platform for all musicians, man.
Absolutely. So, I mean, let's bring it up to date. You just dropped the EP, Christmas EP. You're working on a solo EP as well. And let's talk about the group. Last album came out in 2015.
Yep.
And what I've noticed with the group, I think you guys still teeter-totter around that pop slash R&B sound, but I noticed it's a little more R&B now. Just talk about, you know, new music from the group, like what direction you guys see yourself going in moving forward.
You know, the thing is, it's like, especially with this last album, we did kind of embrace more of that the R&B side of our lives. That's
Yeah.
probably more my influence,
Yeah.
because I'm such an R&B head. I really am, and you know, and I haven't had an opportunity. Well, I've had the opportunities, but I hadn't done a solo situation in a minute,
Yeah.
and I really wanted to do some more R&B stuff. And the guys, you know, the guys are those are my brothers, you know, and they always trust my judgment and I trust theirs. And, you know, when it comes to the music, I kind of head that up. So, you know, I would just run songs by them and say, you know, I know this is probably a little more R&B, but it just feels good, you know, and
Yeah.
everybody's like, you know, we with you, bro, let's go. And,
Hmm.
but we definitely did. I mean, we always will have to, from now until we stop recording, we will always have to do some pop sounding stuff
Right. Yeah.
because we have fans that want that from us.
Yeah.
But then, you know, as an artist, you want to grow, like you want to stretch your legs a little, and
Right.
and you know, hopefully people give us that excuse me, that room to do so.
Yeah.
And you know, but you kind of have to just do some stuff that makes you happy. You don't want to just keep recycling the same old, because then,
Right.
you know, people could just go listen to your old stuff for that. But at the
Hmm.
same time, you do want to give people what they want, and people love
Exactly.
hearing those love songs from us.
Yeah. Amazing. So, Jamie, that's all that I've got for you. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yo, I just like to say thanks again, brother, for you know,
Uh,
taking the time to do this. And
yeah.
of course, you know, for those who don't know where they can find me, it's simple as Hey Jamie Jones. And that's everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, of course, here on IG. And my Christmas EP is out. It's called Christmas at Home with Jamie Jones. I know we're all kind of stuck at home these days. So, you know, I just wanted to do something hopefully that will hopefully take people's minds off of, you know, just all the stuff that's going on in our world, and hopefully just give people a few minutes, man, of just allowing the music to transport you to a happy place. And I was able to do a couple of those Christmas songs that don't always get remade a lot, but they're really dope. You know,
Yeah.
I love, you know, Give Love on Christmas Day and Someday at Christmas by Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
And so I got a chance to, and of course, you know, my top three artists are Donny Hathaway, Stevie Wonder, and Prince. So I got a chance to do a Donny Hathaway song and a Stevie song on this album. Prince never had a
Right.
Christmas album or a Christmas song. If he did, you would have heard me on there doing it.
Right.
But I'm super excited about it. I'm super proud of this. It came together quickly, but it came together really well. And you know, if y'all looking for some good Christmas music out there, you know, please check it out.
Amazing. Jamie, I appreciate you for taking the time out for this. You've got our support, so just keep us posted on everything you've got going on. It just keep going, man. Just keep putting out music. We want to listen to music. We love R&B. We love what you do, so just keep it going, man.
Amen. I'm gonna do it for as long as I can. And I want to be able to come back and see you again with the next one, bro.
All right, man. We'll talk again soon.
All right, man. That's what's
All
up.
right, you take care.
Y'all
Yep.
be good. God bless everybody out there watching.
Take care, man.
All right, y'all.